Well, here is a very interesting question that we've had asked to us by readers and other people. This is one specific question, and it's my autistic son is 13 and still nonverbal. What is he capable of learning? So that's an interesting question because I would say it's you can't even measure that because you know people are capable of almost infinite learning. If you have a human brain, which you have to have a human brain if you're autistic, the average human brain has something like 86 billion neurons, and each of those neurons can connect with itself or with each other. And so that literally, I don't even know what that number is. It's very close to infinity. And so if you're autistic, you definitely have one of those brains too. So and when you have infinite capacity for neuroplasticity, which is what happens when neurons connect in the prefrontal, or sorry, in the cortex, and and uh, and allow each part of the brain to communicate with each other. Uh, that's how we think, how our brains operate. And so when we go back to this question, I'd say what I've encountered is that learning often involves solving problems. I mean, so if you have no problems in your life, you have no challenges to overcome. It's very hard to keep learning. I mean, think of yourself as an adult, and as an adult who can walk. Are you still learning to walk? No, because I mean you've mastered it. There are no problems. You are a walker. I think the very same thing can happen for any person. I mean, if you don't have any challenges, you don't have any goals, and you don't have supports to help you achieve those goals and to solve those problems, well, then you can't learn. So I think uh, it it's not dependent on if you're autistic whether or not you can learn. There are many other factors. Um, but that's one angle to think about it.
Yeah, I would say that a 13-year-old who's nonverbal can learn anything that a verbal 13-year-old can learn. Just it's that this person communicates differently. And I think it maybe boils down to the way they communicate and how we've taught them to communicate. Because traditionally, when someone's nonverbal, we start them out with simplified communication, which involves pictures. Um, and these pictures are usually abstract. And we all know that kids on the spectrum are very concrete learners. They need concrete, universally recognized symbols to really learn. You can't teach them some abstract thing that maybe has multiple meanings and teach that's language. It's very difficult. And initially, I would use the symbols and the icons and try to teach communication, and I just fell back on just using words and typing, and it works so much better. So now if a person has a communication system that's the same as everyone else's communication system, i.e. literacy in words, now they can communicate and learn. But I think first of all you need to establish that communication system, and without it you'll never know what's in that person's head. And they may not know how to absorb the information other than listening, which is a sensory input, which also may be distorted, or they may be thinking about something else. But written, it's concrete, it's there in front of them, and it's there for their reference. They can go back and look at it as long or as many times as they need to. Whereas I think Matthew explained this super well, is if you say something, it's gone. It's said and then it's gone. So they can't go back and refer to what is it that you said. I don't know. I can't go back. I didn't hear it correctly. I was thinking about something else. I don't know what you said. And the general public takes that as, well, he doesn't know. Well, maybe he just didn't hear it. So writing things down and making it concrete is super important. And I do believe that once that communication system is established, a 13-year-old can learn like a 13-year-old.
And I think a way to understand, I mean, maybe even sympathize or empathize what it feels like to experience this is to if you hear someone speak or let's say you're learning a new language yourself, and you're taking a Spanish class, and then you hear fluent speakers speak to you. Maybe you catch a few words here and there, but then if it's written down, you can reference what was said. I mean, this is for any person. Like, let's say you're an adult and you wanted to learn Spanish, or you're a child and you're learning Spanish. That's what makes spoken language so difficult, is that it happens really fast. And then it doesn't stay there for you to consider. You have to have retained it in your memory. And it's easier said than done, because I think you could also argue, is it easier to hear a song one time and then be able to sing it back with all the notes correctly and all the lyrics correctly, or is it easier to look at written words and then sing it? Because I think a lot of people look at when people use a karaoke, when they sing karaoke, a lot of times they're reading the words. Why? Because it's easier to remember words and to reference them, because you can sit there and look at them and make that association. And I think that the way that we like to explain it to people is that written language solves the problem of signal degradation. I guess you can think of it that way, that you can look at that signal, or you can look at that message and reference it and then analyze it. Very similar to when you play music. You can, like, say you hear a passage and you're like, what was that? Well, if you have it written out, you can keep referencing it and playing it on your guitar or playing drums and going over it over and over what was written out, as opposed to be like, what did that person just play? And then you have to hear it over and over, as opposed to looking at it. Writing really helps solve that issue. And it's universal. I mean, when you're using written language, when you're using letters and words, those are universal. I mean, for the most part. Like, I mean, in English-speaking countries, obviously, English and written English is universal. But symbols like pictographs and pictures representing something else, like this is not universal. I mean, this is this maybe a small group of people know what that means. I don't know what that is. That might be one. It might mean single. It might mean less.
It's actually the symbol for the word another.
Oh, see, I wasn't even close.
Yeah.
And so I just have to guess what it means, as opposed to if you put the word another up, I know exactly what that means, but only through context. Here's another one. Smash. That's how. So I don't even know. I don't know. So, I mean, if we don't know this stuff, and I've been speaking my whole life, and so is Lois, and reading too. And these kids we're working with, even if you're 13, how are you expecting people to learn when things are not clear, autistic or not? If learning has to be clear, especially when it involves a highly complicated skill like speaking or reading. So we have to make language, speaking, communication very clear, literally for anyone. But we found especially it helps very much with autistic kids, because they have a lot of other things they're working through, the sensory issues. But I would say the same thing happens with imagine yourself as an adult language learner. You're still going to have the same challenges.
So that's our answer in a nutshell. So they're capable of learning, and I think that they have a strong foundation in communication. They can learn anything. I mean, I have a couple books here written by nonverbal people. We got Ido Kadar. He wrote a novel, actually. He's written, I believe, 3 books now. And we have a young guy, 9 years old, Diego Pena. This one is a very easy, quick read. I recommend it to all parents of nonverbals, just because it's a nice, quick read. I read it in half an hour. I think everyone can. And it gives you a lot of insights to the importance of of just words and replacing the symbols with words. Our kids don't need it simplified so much that you don't know what the word is. Now, how is this easier to learn than this? Okay, so this is the symbol for now, which makes no sense. I couldn't figure that out until I saw the word that went with it. So the bottom line is, don't think that they need the symbols. Really just focus on the words. They're capable of learning reading and writing and literacy.
Yeah, words in context,
In context, of course.
Yeah, so I mean, like the word now, I mean, if you teach none of us really knows the word now until it was taught to us in context. I mean, all these words involve context. And I think a lot of the pictographs are trying to create context. But what we've found is it creates semantic noise. It creates a barrier to word meaning. And we've even done little experiments where we've taken object character recognition systems on our app Inner Voice, and we took pictures of symbols, thinking like, well, maybe an AI system would be able to figure this out. We're using one developed by Microsoft, which is definitely an advanced system. And it had no idea what those things were. It was like, it just would give crazy answers. So if a very complex AI system can't understand those and pair that with a word, I mean, it's safe to assume that other people, adults, children, neurotypical and autistic people are going to have a tough time knowing what that means. So we want to just try to present words in meaningful context, which is, best practices for communication therapy.
So we'll have another question next week, and feel free to post questions or go to our website, autismtoday.com, and send us a message. Thank you very much.